Overall, it just felt a little embarrassing, right? To be walking around with people pretending that this is real, that this really is the 100 most influential people, and that somehow you've moved up in some imaginary power grid.
Look, I worked at Time. This event, I'll use an in-play word. It's a scam. It's an advertising play. They use the leverage of 100 plus years of a great journalism brand. And they say to famous people and influential people, come be at the dinner and you can tell people you're one of the 100 most influential people in the world. Then they say to their biggest advertisers, come sit at a table. You can sit with the Nobel Prize winner and Megyn Kelly. I won't say it's corrupt, but it is not an exercise in journalism. It's an exercise in stroking and cultivating advertisers.
But then you had people like Blake Lively, who was there with her husband, Ryan Reynolds. By the way, they were there. I think she was inducted the first year I was inducted too. We're on the same path with these people. And Blake Lively has been in some movies and some successful TV shows, but in no world is this person one of the most influential people in America. This is part of what you say is the scam.
There's a lot of controversy right now with Blake being on the Time 100 list.
It's a ridiculous joke. She shouldn't be there. She has no influence over anything.
Right. I mean, what do you think of when you read headlines like every day about her and Justin?
I mean, I think she launched a fake Me Too allegation against him, and she's lived to regret doing it because virtually every allegation she has made has fallen apart. And so for her to be honored for doing that, to try to ruin a man over absolutely nothing, is a scandal.
Yeah.
And obviously they're looking for big stars to come here and generate pages on their magazines, but that was very wrong.
Right.
These are just a couple of clips from my upcoming Blake Lively deep dive. I don't know the Blake Lively of the red carpet or the Met Gala. I never watched Gossip Girl. The Blake Lively I know is a philanthropist and a student of our country's most intractable problems.
That's fucking retarded.
She and her husband, Ryan Reynolds, reached out in 2019 to make a contribution to the NAACP Legal Defense Fund. I have been getting a few calls as our work fighting against voter suppression and police brutality was receiving national attention. I'm always curious about the kind of research famous people do before they make that cold call to offer their support. The ones I have remained in relationship with are those who, like Blake, really did their homework. I admired immediately her curiosity and her sincere work to understand the conditions that shaped this country.
Gun, mouth.
I remember an early conversation in which she expressed frustration that so much of our nation's history was not a part of the instruction she had received as a student. Her commitment to filling those gaps and becoming the most fully informed and prepared citizen is what I appreciate most about her. Blake is a serious person. She's a risk taker, and she's committed to moving this country forward for her children and for mine.
Jail time.
Okay, Sherrilyn, she literally got married on a slave plantation. And if it's your assertion that she did not learn about slavery as a student, you can take that bullshit excuse and shove it right up your... She seriously couldn't find a more deserving donor to honor, really? Even in the midst of Blake's legal scandal, where she had been credibly accused of extortion and making false allegations against two innocent men, one of whom is black, or did Sherrilyn not bother to read the other side of things after she consumed the New York Times hit piece? I'm not even someone who subscribes to the contemporary concept of white tears and the radically woke idea that white women are not allowed to be seen as victims nowadays, due to the fact that in the past, white women's tears were indeed weaponized against black men and often resulted in their wrongful imprisonment and lynchings. But my God, did Sherrilyn miss the mark on this one. Jamie Heath, a black man, is currently having his life and company destroyed by false allegations, including one that he made eye contact with Blake when she told him to face a wall for no other explanation than an ambitious white woman's caprice. For that reason, his reputation and life has been destroyed. But sure, let's not take that into consideration, or the fact that she was married on a slave plantation with slave cabins still erected prominently on the property, or the fact that she allowed allowed the antebellum South to be romanticized and pined over in her now defunct lifestyle blog called The Preserve. None of that matters to the NAACP, right? Because she is curious and her pockets are deep. Sure, let's go ahead and honor her for performatively tossing money at a problem she is very much still at the center of, granting her undeserved and conveniently timed praise to help rehabilitate her image in a time of crisis. This is all so vomitous, I can barely formulate my thoughts without hurling all over my keyboard. I suppose the funniest part about Sherrilyn going on and on about Blake being so wonderful and committed to change, specifically for a donation she made to the NAACP way back in 2019, is the fact that when gifted the opportunity, Blake didn't even use her platform at the gala to speak on those very issues she was honored for pretending to care about. The entire purpose of her speaking that night was self-serving. It was first and foremost to victimize herself and bolster her false allegations, and then she spent the rest of her time doing her best cosplay of a feminist and spewing a bunch of word salad about female triumph, although by virtue of her scandalous appropriation of victimhood, she only serves to harm real victims by increasing the probability that when they do speak up, they will not be believed because of women like her. What it boils down to is Blake Lively is playing make-believe. She's in her own world, out of touch with reality and the destruction she's caused around her, totally oblivious to how far she has fallen in the public eye. Either that, or she's so delusional as to genuinely believe she can gaslight everyone, including her Hollywood peers, into ignoring her outright criminal behavior through sheer will and determination and a can-do attitude, and of course, a winning smile. To facilitate this great deception, I believe she has enlisted the help of sponsored media, and they are working around the clock to rehabilitate her shattered image ever since her new former CIA PR guy came on board. You can tell there's a shift in what's going on here. More desperation coupled with more audaciousness. This was a total PR stunt, just like the cringe bakery stunt. And it appears to me that her new PR guy started out relentlessly sponsoring media hit pieces against Justin. And the very best these heavy hitters like the LA Times and the University of California's The Guardian, whatever the fuck that is, could dredge up was that Justin had engaged in toxic positivity, meaning he was, and get this, too nice. It instantly made me think of that skit between Ellen and Jimmy Kimmel where they're insulting each other with compliments, trying to out-nice each other.
Because I have to get to an animal shelter. I'm volunteering tonight. I don't want to be late.
Oh, no. I'm actually volunteering at a homeless shelter tonight. I'm helping them shelter. So, yeah, no, let's do this.
That's basically what they're accusing Justin of, weaponizing niceness. And I admit, it doesn't instill much faith in our nation's premier intelligence agency that this is the best one of their alums could come up with. My God, what a colossal fail that was. He then, in my opinion, turned his sights to sponsoring positive media on behalf of Blake, instead of spending a great deal of wasted effort and money trying to dig up dirt on the literal nicest man in the world. That's why you see this sudden onslaught of publications kissing Blake's ass despite the horrendous behavior she is factually guilty of and has not directly apologized for or taken accountability for. The same kind of behavior the media wouldn't take 2 seconds to call out or write think pieces about if Blake happened to be a right-wing or conservative pundit or, any anti-establishment public figure who ever lived or dared to speak out against legacy media's political narratives. Because Blake espouses the right politics, her sins are wholly ignored. And for her part, Blake is happily playing along with her new reality as it is orchestrated for her by the former CIA guy. The math basically breaks down in her mind to the more events she can attend, grinning incessantly from ear to ear like a certified lunatic, pretending everything is swell and that her professional life is not crumbling in the wake of her fake Me Too allegations being discredited, the more she can convince the world she did nothing wrong. She's so pathetic. Even her team knows she's pathetic. Even her husband knows she's pathetic. Even she knows she's pathetic. It's written all over her synthetic, filler-laced face, which looks to be on the brink of fracturing from all the forced smiling she's been doing of late. And it's clear they all understand just how much of a miscalculation it was for her to publicly go after Justin Baldoni and Wayfair Studios after extorting them multiple times and stealing their movie out from beneath them. She is willfully ignoring the whispering taking place behind her back at these star-studded events and the disdainful glances tossed her way as she swans about on the red carpets, trying to salvage what's left of her social standing. This woman is as phony as a $3 bill and as transparent as they come. She's a glorified stay-at-home mom pretending to be a Hollywood icon when really she's just an unremarkable Nepo baby whose parents' work in the film industry paved the way into her first few gigs, 2 of which she starred in alongside her late father. She then peaked after being carried through every season of Gossip Girl, followed by a few middling and forgettable features that failed to propel her into more substantial work. She then married up, and everyone conveniently forgot that she is at best a B-list actress who socially climbed her way into inner circles with A-listers, basking in the wattage of true megastar elites who she shamelessly name-dropped to the point where Taylor Swift publicly distanced herself from Blake amid her legal drama. And it is my sincerest belief that her husband is quite literally buying her accolades at this point, and otherwise is extorting those accolades out of the people who refuse to play along and pretend she has any merit to speak of. Let's be perfectly honest here. It is no coincidence that both Blake and Ryan were on the Times 100 list for 2025, even with her ongoing legal scandal where she's basically become the new Amber Heard in the eyes of millions. Their entire PR play is to continuously assert her victimhood and hope that'll be enough to overshadow the fact that she is an atomic bitch who tried to ruin the lives of countless people for sport and personal gain. And you can bet your sweet ass that Ryan told Time magazine he wouldn't participate in their ridiculous elitist circle jerk unless Blake was given a mention too, so that she could then use it as a platform to not so subtly remind the world that she's a victim, you know. Even having the gall to invoke the name of the incredibly brave Giselle Pellico, who I previously spoke about in one of my older videos, in an attempt to align herself with a real victim and a true feminist icon, shamelessly aligning herself with a woman of steel who survived mass rape orchestrated by her husband in order to legitimize her bogus case of sexual harassment against an innocent man. Time magazine mustered up a story about a donation Blake made way back in 2019, 6 years ago, to justify naming her as an influential person committed to social justice and a titan of what exactly we have positively no clue. She's not even a titan in her chosen profession. So them granting her that label and pretending anything else she's done in life falls even remotely in the realm of being titanic is so laughable as to almost be satirical, like they were mocking her and snickering behind her back at that event. And I'm sure most people couldn't help but laugh that night, seeing her standing there in her best dress among all the real adults and true titans of varying industries, accepting what amounts to the world's most expensive participation trophy and using her mother's trauma to make her hollow, phony feminist speech warrant the attention of the room. Because she is so despairingly empty and constitutionally flawed, she personally didn't possess the substance it would take to meaningfully fill the small space of time allocated for her to speak. So she resorted to yet more gaslighting and aligning herself with real victims. Let's take a look at Blake Lively's true legacy where the Black community is concerned, shall we? In September 2012, Blake would marry Ryan Reynolds in a small private ceremony among family and friends at Boone Hall Plantation in South Carolina. Of all the wedding venues available in the world, Blake and her husband saw a location where atrocious human rights abuses had taken place, which still prominently made their legacy known to all visitors and said it is the foremost thing they educate their guests on, and which also still features the slave shacks rather prominently on the property, and they merely decided they wanted to tie the knot there because in their minds that particular history was inconsequential in the grand scheme of their desired wedding aesthetic. Let's set aside the fact that hundreds of people were enslaved on this plantation over a number of centuries, and that it is known for its appalling working conditions, since slaves were made to produce building materials in a brick factory where they were reportedly forced to operate furnaces. We don't even want to imagine some of the horrors that may have occurred in a slave labor environment of such inherent danger, where labor laws and best practices were not in place, and where it didn't matter anyway because human captivity was the order of the day. It is just reprehensible that these two individuals saw a slave plantation and saw the history spelled out in plain letters on the website, and saw the tours and lectures they offered for Black history and how it pertained to those particular grounds, and instead of moving on to a more appropriate venue, chose to ignore its horrific history and instead romanticized the landscape and pretended it was some sort of whimsical southern backdrop for their real-life fairy tale. Like much else Blake and Ryan are guilty of, their actions were deeply abhorrent. This Boone plantation scandal, which would not be the couple's last, illustrated for us their special brand of tone-deaf opportunism and exploitation, which would become characteristic of them throughout the years as they seized every opportunity imaginable to promote themselves, their projects, and their brands, even when it's clear that doing so would be incredibly vulgar and in poor taste. Just like when Blake chose to ignore the central themes of domestic violence in the movie It Ends With Us to promote her hair care and booze products, or like when she piled on the bandwagon to mock Kate Middleton and promoted her booze line while doing so, shortly before we all learned that Kate Middleton had been absent from the public due to her dealing with a devastating cancer diagnosis. But that is the Blake and Ryan brand at this point, and what they will always be remembered for: tastelessness, vulgarity, intellectual theft, and that ruthless, elitist amorality that makes your skin crawl. The sort of unscrupulousness and audacity that only big money can facilitate. Plus, there's something about these two individuals in particular getting married on a slave plantation in light of all we've come to know about their diabolical business dealings and literal racketeering in Hollywood that comes off as sociopathic to me. The full video will be out in a couple of weeks. Thank you so much for watching.